Alright, I see we're rolling. I see the sound is moving, which means one only thing left to do, which is to start this properly. Hi, I'm Flintworth, and welcome to Creature Creator, the show where I help you recreate your favorite monsters and stories at your gaming tables. And today, I am excited to go and take a stab at Robert Eggers' latest flick, Nosferatu. Now, if you were joining us last week with Graveyard Gush, we were talking about this film extensively. Now, while I myself am not like the biggest fan of it, I still can respect what it was going for, and oh man, the level of aesthetics and just creepy vibes and old dramatic intonations we could bring to our games, whether they're board games, yes, and or tabletop role-playing adventures. Now, for those who have been with me for a while, at least more of my pre-recorded stuff, if you haven't heard already, I have been doing more of these live-action versions of the show. Mainly because with us having a house now, I've been busy the last few months with the move-in and getting everything all set up. In fact, where I am right now will soon be a thing of the past here in our living room at the apartment. Nope, I'll have a new study with a designated place, which means all this stuff I have to go put down will be all set to go right away. So yay, that's cool. More of a fun backgrounds. And then yes, at some point I return to the pre-recorded videos I like to do. So until then, bear with me. Who knows? Maybe even this like live format of the show can work out in the long run. Two, if you have probably caught on with both me pitching this through social media. If you came through there, hi, welcome. By the way, Baka, I see you are there in the chat, so glad to have you here with me. But yes, going forward, the show will not just include my advice and thoughts on recreating, well, in this case, Nosferatu and other monsters for tabletop RPGs like it's traditionally been in the past. Going forward, I want to also include my thoughts on how to do the same thing with board games and other kind of, well, just tabletop shenanigans and fun. Because in this day and age, I wanted to try to include all my gamer friends. Because not everyone can have a DM, not everyone can be a DM. And sometimes all you want to do is get the whole family together around the table and just, have a good time. Isn't that right, Tifa? Hi, how you doing? Yes, Dad is on the air right now. So, to that end, as you go through today talking about Nosferatu, if you have any thoughts on either or of those subjects, please, by all means, shout them out in the chat. Let me know if you have any questions as we're going forward. And even if you are watching this after the fact, please leave it down in the comments below so that we can go and keep the conversation going. Because like any kind of good story, or really any kind of hobby, there's always things being developed, always new things to try out. And I'm just a guy on the internet who has a passion for gaming, and I like to think, I'm a good storyteller at that too. But even I still have a few things to learn. So that off the bat, let's go and just kind of like really dive in to the vibes we want with this kind of a game night. What is that, Baka? Perpetrators for Pathfinder. I never heard of that phrase before, but I love it. Okay, you can go. Be gone, cutie. Or want me keep snuggling you. Okay, fine. But if we're going to do this, we're going to be on camera. Because I want the cute, corky cred. All right. You wanted this? You asked for it. Okay, so first and foremost, with anything we do tonight, you probably won't be having your entire time spent with, cute, cuddly corgis at your table. No. Robert Eggers' dark re-envisioning of this classic. And we're talking classic story that has been around technically since 1922 and beyond. Back during when the original Nosferatu came out. Whew! Back in the day as played by Max Schreck. Yes, his last name sounds just like the good old green ogre. But this lovable creep, who many of us, at least in my age range as a millennial, probably first saw back in, SpongeBob, it has kind of a goblin-esque look, and while there's frankly a lot of cool, creepy imagery with the original silent film, what Robert managed to create, these visually sane, is kinds of spooky nastiness. Granted, probably that a little bit has to do with the fact that it is based in Germany once again, and he has like this knack of like a gray color scheme to it. Like here, look at this one with the main heroine Ellen. To kind of get my vibe here, where it's bring up the camera again. Has like kind of like this gray, subtle tones. It's dry, it's cold, and just unsettling at times. So going forward, we want to kind of create a little bit of that, like this dark, unsettling vibes with a mix of undead, because Nosferatu, the creature himself, Count Orlok, as fans of the horror genre will be quick to correct me, in this version of the story, isn't like that goblin visage from German cinema of old, but no, he's more like a walking, talking corpse with one hell of a mustache. Like, let's see here. I'm going to try to get a few... show what I mean. Let's see, do we have Count Orlok? Because that's the big part. Like, the hard part with getting the vibe, if you've not seen the story, at least the movie yet, I mean, is that there's not really good photos yet because it's still in theaters. They've been awfully secretive with them. But yeah, he's got like this sickly, looming body to his just caricature with one sick-ass coast and one hell of a funny mustache, which is very much is in contrast to little bony fingers Orlok over here. So really, how do you kind of go about really getting into that? Now, we'll get to the tabletop stuff in a second, because I have probably more to say about that, and I can then spend the rest of the time really diving into it, because once again, as my fans of the show have enjoyed in the past, I do have a stat sheet that I made for my take of Orlok in a D&D setting, which if you want to look at beforehand is down in the description below. Just prepare the stat sheet and peruse as I talk along. But board game wise, there are a few titles that I grew up with. I think we kind of fit perfectly for this kind of aesthetic. One of the earliest ones, pardon me as I kind of go try and dig it up. Let's see. Vampire Hunting. Guess what I love about live shows. Got like, you know, this little impromptu searching. Let's see. Here we go. Perfect. Vampire Hunter, the game. This came out. Thank you, Board Game Geek, for having all this stuff on record. But check this out. Vampire Hunter came out in the early 2000s. It's a game that you play entirely in the dark. Now, while the gameplay mechanics themselves aren't exactly, I would say, you know, the best. Like, they're not, like, bad. They're just not really complicated. But it does create kind of this interesting atmosphere about it, because in the light, the game looks like this. Grayscale with a looming singular, I guess you can best describe as a lighthouse in the middle of the board. Now, based on the time of day, the light uses different colors to simulate, you know, the passing of time. Where during the day it's, you know, red, and during the night it's blue. And what's kind of cool about it is that the board has different symbols that are colored differently, so some are really revealed during certain points in the game day, allowing you this kind of like fun, yes, for families, kind of slow discovery of mysteries as you go about hunting down Dracula. Yes, it's Dracula in this one, but frankly, Count Orlok is a ripoff of Dracula, so, you know, it's in the same line. And good, I think, if you can find it on eBay or even in Goodwill, I think, a good spot to go to for like a very simple beer and pretzels kind of game. Like, this isn't complicated at all. It doesn't need to be. This is the kind of thing you bring out at a Halloween party or even a viewing of Nosferatu that you want to get people, kind of into the spirit of things before you put on the dark film. And frankly, with a little bit of, color at the start before you go into the gray bleakness that is Robert Eggers' rendition of Nosferatu, could be, a good appetizer, or maybe even a good dessert to kind of cheer people up after watching Ellen get, spoilers, to a story that came out 100 years ago, sucked dry to kill the vamp. But let's say you want to kind of go a bit darker, a bit more complicated. There's been plenty of things as of late that would be perfect for you. But before you get that, I notice Baka's been saying a few things here. I'm fairly certain Gothic horror often includes a theme of sins of the past, so that might be something to consider trying to include. Yeah, that's a good point. It does have, like, a Gothic horror that is a nature of, like, societal build-up or even cultural mistakes that now the heroes of the present have to kind of overcome. I do like that. That's a fair, valid point there, Baka. Yes, Vampire the Masquerade is another vampire-themed tabletop RPG. Thank you for bringing that up. That is going to be a great suggestion for those looking to get right into the tabletop RPG kind of thing. But for those still in the kind of the board game department, you can't go wrong with Fury of Dracula. Now, this game is kind of popular. It's had many versions over the years. But for those who enjoy the side of Nosferatu, of watching Liam Dafoe going around the streets of that Germanic plague-ridden little town, will kind of enjoy this title because it basically pits one player as Dracula against a team of vampire hunters, having to go and like essentially chase them around Europe, which it's meant to emulate like the actual ending of the book Dracula. And by and large, I've watched playthroughs of this online. There's a great one by Will Wheaton's old YouTube channel, which I'm not sure if it's still going, where he and his friends do play a version of this. And if you're on the fence of trying checking out yourself, I would highly recommend looking into that first. What's kind of really nice about this version of the stories, and actually with any of these I suggest, a lot of these are going to be catered visually to look like the Bela Lugosi version of Drac, which, I mean, let's look at this art alone. You can kind of see it right here with the nice tight hairline and the nice business suit, which, yes, isn't what Orlok looks like in Nosferatu. But that can be easily changed through the use of, unique components. And honestly, if you're going into making a board game night themed around Nosferatu, I don't think you were too worried about being exactly like Robert Eggers' movie. I would find it funny in the long run if we do see some kind of like Nosferatu the board game where you have to go about town hunting down plague rats and maybe rolling to see if you can, or play certain cards to lure Nosferatu to your bedroom chamber to kick him off. But that said, there's one more game, at least in my experience, the board game wise, that actually would be kind of a good fit if you actually want something that's a bit more in terms of the colors and the style of the player pieces to kind of fit more Robert Eggers' world. And something that's really more, I guess more the point here, a bit more, what's the word I'm looking for here? Component-y? You might laugh at this, but honestly, I would suggest looking into the Bloodborne board game. Because I remember talking about this with a few people and seeing it online, how many of them said the movie's vibes reminded them like it was something like straight out of Yharnam from the From Software Bloodborne board game. And honestly, as far as like gameplay goes, Yeah, this is one of my favorite ones. It's been really nice too if you are looking for something that's a bit more co-op-y and don't want to have someone play the bad guy. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Canehurst, Wretched Wild Bloods. Yes, they are actually even vampires you can fight in Bloodborne if you get the right expansions. And it looks like right now on Amazon, the main game is only 79.47, which isn't really that bad to get into it. And just looking at like the pieces alone, and the nice kind of grayscale and blue vibes, and if you really want to, you could easily go and off of like something like Hero Forge and make custom pieces to look like the various heroes from Nosferatu. I forgot the name of the movie for a hot second. Now, even if that isn't enough to truly kind of like wet your whistle, so to speak, you could look into finding games like one of my personal favorites, which I've talked about and have played a lot here on the channel, is the fantastic miniatures game Don't Look Back, which, for those who have yet to hear me spiel about this game, which I used to use and will plan to use once again all the time in my past Creature Creator videos, is a miniatures game that effectively allows you to recreate almost any of your beloved or favorite horror films. And typically it's leans more towards recreating like slasher films, but there are enough like components and wiggle room with its design that you can easily go and recreate like good old Robert Eggers' world with the right custom components. Because that's the nice thing about it, is that it has everything you really need to kind of build it up. And I do know they're planning to have an upcoming like another, because they do these kind of like releases in, I want to say like Kickstarter kind of fashion, but they do have a lot of different like pre-order periods, and I know they have one coming up soon, which, if my memory serves me, is meant to use this system in an old Gothic setting. So it cannot be any better time in the near future. I'm going to actually find the right title of that, because I'm on their Discord. Give me one hot second when I look that up. But I do know they have plenty of custom pieces and pieces terrain you can build to go and really create your own dramatic Robert Eggers-esque run through the city to, I don't know, maybe hunt down or run from Count Orlok. Let's see, where is it? Where are you? Let's do this. Something made it easy for me to search this on this page, because everything is a little bit out of whack because of my dual monitors not being the same ratio here. The Doctor, Disease, and Vampire themes are reminding me of Shiki. What would that be, actually, Baka? I think you've talked about that before. Okay. I'll find it. I better find it, because after all this searching, it would be kind of a letdown if I didn't. Yes. He's over here. No. No, it's their sci-fi game. Here we go. The 1698 pre-order. Let's bring that up on screen, shall we? Whoop. There we go. Like I said, this is a almost like a version of Don't Look Back, set to have more of those nice, kind of oldie scare gothic horror kind of setups. And yeah, I haven't checked it out myself yet, mainly because, move and lack of space. But I would not be surprised. This had everything you needed to kind of like recreate the perfect Nosferatu kind of board game experience. But this probably helps with the fact that this kind of gameplay is almost a borderline tabletop RPG, which some would argue, if you're at that point, you may as well just go break out your good old like Dungeon Master screen, get some dice, and start rolling them around the table. And to that end, I would say, yeah, I know it's a fair point. There's a lot of good options, as we've kind of pointed out already, of gaming systems you could bring out to do just that. However, there is one last game that just occurred to me that could be a good option to get the atmosphere and vibes of Nosferatu without having to go full DM, but a little bit of DM, would be to consider looking into like secret role kind of games. Like, I'm talking about the kind of games where you can have like Mafia, Secret Hitler, the Resistance, for those who know it. For me personally, my favorite one of these kind of games is Blood on the Clock Tower, which is another one I've mentioned many a times before, and I have brought up when I did my Thing video for this series, ages ago. But the nice thing about Blood on the Clock Tower is that it is the perfect game that has all the rules you need. It looks big and heavy, but it's frankly lighter than that people would assume. But effectively, it is a Secret Hitler werewolf mafia game with a DM, who then could go and actually kind of like weave a story to be in the vibes of, well, the Nosferatu world. But more importantly, what I like about it is that in many versions of Count Orlok's story, he's known for causing about, people to go mad, become enthralled as his slaves, charmed as you were. And you can use that as kind of like a jumping off point for this. Like, oh yes, we're here now, we're a bunch of talented villagers, and one of us, unbeknownst to the rest of us, has fallen under the thrallment of Count Orlok, Nosferatu, vampire, the living curse, the plague bringer. And yeah, I can see that working so well, especially considering some of these games involve, player death, that you can even go and theme their deaths around them getting the plague in the middle of the night. All kinds of fun stuff like that. But let's go and take a quick moment to see what Baka's writing down here below. Shiki is an anime and presumably manga about a village. Vampires move in, do vampire things, then the themes of humanity and such are explored. Fun enough, watch if you get into it. Okay, I think you mentioned that last week on Graveyard Gush, which is a review show, and looking forward to next Monday. More about that later. A doctor and a Shinto monk priest are two prominent human characters. Okay, I can see you're getting by this. And if you're creative enough, Call of Cthulhu could work. Investigations, mechanics, and such. Yes, and very much yes. Now, I thank you for bringing that up, because, yeah, I could go on trying to find other last-second board games to talk about or even suggest, but really, the meat and potatoes of this show has always been giving the advice to the forever DMs, or just really to the storytellers out there. Because, DMs is, I think, a limiting term. It's more like game masters, because DMs are just for Dungeons and Dragons, which, to be fair, yes, is the most popular one. Besides the point, as Baka has pointed out, there are plenty of horror-focused tabletop role-playing game systems you can use to just get right into the world of Nosferatu. First and foremost, you mentioned it earlier, what is it? Vampire the Masquerade. I've never played this myself, but I have taken the time and watched plenty of coverage on the system itself, and more specifically on the video games that have been spun off by it. But Vampire the Masquerade is effectively a system where you, the player, get to join one of a variety of different vampire clans. So think kind of like instead of gang warfare, it's vampire warfare. Woo! Which I could see, I could see being used to certainly go and I'm trying to find an example of this to show on screen. I can see you use that to kind of, have Nosferatu. Maybe you're like having a Nosferatu battle against Bela Lugosi vampires. Okay, that's a stretch. That is very much a stretch. But here we go, the third printing, which looks like it can be found on Noble Knight Games. But here, come on, get a bit closer. Come on, there you go, screen there. Perfect, there we go. Vampire the Masquerade. Look at that lovely lady there. But I do know this is, yes, a popular one and has been, I should say been around enough that you should find plenty of supplemental material online on how to learn and or teach this game. In fact, most of these games I'm about to suggest, you can find easily online examples of how to do just that. The Count's Clan Gang. Is that what it's called? Huh. But if you really want to kind of get more into the vampire hunting side of the classic Robert Edgar's, or actually the of Orlok's story, then Call of Cthulhu, yeah, it could be, I think, the better one. It's definitely will allow you to have more opportunities, I'd say, more opportunities to really show not only like the investigation side of Orlok's tale, because if you think about it, and I'll get more into it a bit about actually the story mechanics, but the very kind of heart of Nosferatu's story is that the heroes really don't, in the end, confront the Count. In the end, he's only defeated by a maiden, typically the love interest of the story, sacrificing herself to keep him out long enough to be blasted by the sun. Which, unless you really want to railroad a game, which if you want to do that, I'm not sure why you would want to run a game in the first place. It can be a little bit difficult getting there without feeling like you're taking your players along, like, okay, here you go, you go fight, Count Orlok, but just so you know, one of you's gonna have to sacrifice yourself, and it's probably the lady, which doesn't really leave a whole lot of fun for you or your players to kind of explore different ways around the tale. Which is why I think Call of Cthulhu would be a good choice. So thank you again with that suggestion there, Baka, because a strong element of the Call of Cthulhu, or really we should say Lovecraftian lore, which, by the way, you can find mostly all these books off of chaosum.com's site. I actually have a book myself in the other room. But Call of Cthulhu is, or I should just say, like Lovecraftian tales usually involve some element of heroes on a doomed journey. Like, the more they learn, the more they find out how out of their depths they are. And on top of all that, one of Orlok's strengths is, by and large, is more psychological effects he can have on people's mind. Like, he literally draws the insanity even out of the most sanest of souls. And Call of Cthulhu has many fun little mechanics, tables you can roll on to bring about that insanity and to bring about that madness. That is not to say you can't use more popular versions of this kind of game world, which of course is a lead into talking about Dungeons and Dragons, which, let's be honest here, is one of the most popular systems that currently exists. And typically if you're going to go ask some friends if, hey, do you want to go and play a tabletop RPG, that's usually the game you're going to try to sell them on first. Like, oh, come play Call of Cthulhu. It's like D&D, but set in the 1920s. It's just, you see what I mean? Another thing I wanted to bring up, though, with Cthulhu and these kind of horror-centric systems, that another one you could even go with if you want a story, or I should say a game system you could play with that would allow you to have an element of fear, but without a whole lot of, like, math crunching and dice rolling, which Call of Cthulhu, D&D definitely have a lot of. I'll go with my tried and true suggestion whenever I talk about horror tabletop games. Kids on Bikes. Kids on Bikes is a fantastic system to use. Hell, I brought up as recent as last week, but Kids on Bikes is a game that's basically inspired by Stranger Things, Goonies, Monster Squad, that effectively allows you to kind of create horror stories with simple dice rolling mechanics, but also a lot of nice written in tools you can use, not only as a DM, or I guess a GM, but as a gaming group to kind of figure out, okay, what's everyone's like trigger warnings. Because let's be honest, with a tale or movie like Robert Edgar's story brings up, there are a lot of crazy things. There's talks about, well, frankly, mistreatment of women, of mistreatment of those dealing with mental issues, with children's death. It's heavy, heavy stuff, and that can't really be for anyone. It could be for everyone. So, yeah, Kids on Bikes could be a great choice if you are worried about that. But naturally, that's not why a lot of you are here right now. And Baka, don't worry. I know you're not being dumb, you're being silly. And you know what? I love it when you're silly, so please keep it up there, friend. But let's get to the heart of tonight's suggestions, which is, of course, Dungeons and Dragons, which, fortunately for me, has had plenty of material in the past that can be used for any of your stories. Like, naturally, a good one to go straight into or dive into for any kind of inspiration, or just how do I phrase this? If you're looking for something that's like straight out of the box, they can just go right into a vampire hunt, you can't look no further than the phenomenal Curse of Strahd. The module, of course, I'm talking about here for those who don't know the lingo. Modules are essentially kind of like everything you would worry about as a first-time DM is right there for you. Like, it has a preset world with NPCs, adventures, interlining stories, the works. And if my computer, or should rather my internet, would behave for me, I'll bring up an example to show you the angry little vampire jerk himself, Stranvad Zerovich, which I've done a few videos on, actually. Gosh, that's been so long. Come on, Strahdy. Come on, not all these pictures have to be so tiny. Come on. Who's a good scary vampire? Here, let's go with this on D&D Beyond. There we go, Strahd von Zerovich, who, funny enough, actually has his own Lego now, which I think is just great. Where was I? Yes, so, Curse of Strahd. There's the main story, which pits you against a vampire. Excuse me, I think that'd be more of like a nice, like, mix of... Yes, the Vampire King of Incels. Love it. That's funny, Baka. But yeah, Strahd's kind of like a nice mix of both Bela Lugosi, bit of Max Schreck from the 1922 Nosferatu, but even a little bit of Gary Oldman from the Bram Stoker's Dracula, which then came out in the early 90s with Keanu Reeves. But yes, it is a good starting off point. And the nice thing is that they've developed a few extra material modules or books that you can go dive into to like play the same world. They can get the same vibes out of this, because this setting, which is called not Ravenloft. Is it Ravenloft? That's the name of the castle. Gosh, I'm gonna blank on it, but hang on. It'll come to me in a second. But this world, yeah, it is Guide to Ravenloft. So, but the Domains of Dread, that's what I'm trying to think of the name of. The world this whole place is set in, the Domains of Dread, or Dominions of Dread, has been in the zeitgeist of D&D for decades. Like, we're talking since a little bit into Gary Gygax's time. But here, no. Flip us around. There we go. Another book you can look into would be this one, Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. This book contains all kinds of various monsters and characters that would fit into any kind of ideal gothic game you have in mind. I'm using it myself in many ways to my continuing stories based in Ravenloft. Both of these, though, I could see easily tuned to creating a more adventurous take on the Count Orlok story. And there's really going to be like no shortage in the realm of D&D, because there's been a lot of books in the past I have used that don't, I guess, mechanically translate well into, let's see, D&D proper, but it's not that hard to kind of go in, bring them out. How to say this? There's a lot of material you can basically go and refit easily into your own new Ravenloft games, providing you just focus more on, like, borrowing their lore. Like, I have borrowed from all kinds of different books to kind of create oodles of stories in the world of Ravenloft and other kind of places throughout their multiverse. But that does beg the question, okay? So we talked about board games, we talked about the tabletop systems. What really is, like, the key things you need to bring up in these stories? Like, how do you go about bringing the life, or really unlife, to your Nosferatu tales? And I have been thinking about that ever since I saw the film myself last month. Or I could say last year. That it really comes down to one character to really kind of be at the heart of your tale. And that is the character of Ellen, which, for those who need a quick refresher, is the female protagonist of the Nosferatu story. She is the one that, I guess you can say, is like the wife, the fiance to Nosferatu's version of Renfield. She is the Mina. She is the sole thing of desire Count Orlok wants, and will do anything she can, or he can, to get. And in this latest version of 2024, I was about to say 25, in the latest version of Nosferatu, she's also the one who effectively raised Count Orlok from the dead, which I think is wild and creepy. And much like other monsters I've brought up on this show, having a character like Ellen can be perfect for running your games, for one simple fact, in that having a character like her can be like, how to say this, having it be like the perfect, like, adventure hook for your players. Like, you can make essentially any NPC be this character, be like the source of Orlok's desire. Because if you go about making any of the players, like, essentially your Ellen, in my opinion, you run into the problem of then they're like kind of wild cards. They might not bring out the elements you need in a good Nosferatu story, like elements of sacrifice, of pain, of giving into ultimately desire. Because as Count Orlok says almost creepily in the latest film, he's not a monster, he is an appetite. He's not a thing. He is an embodiment of, like, lust, and just the fact that he's a corpse makes him even creepier. But that's the kind of thing you want your players to deal with, is that they're not dealing with a truly a villain. They're dealing with almost an impending doom that's coming to their town. And ideally, in my recommendation, they even should know that they're dealing with an ever-present monster slowly coming their way. Like, I would go in kind of like, and It really depends on how clever they are. If they figure it out, they figure it out. That's fine. That's great. Then they'll get to feel proud if they figured out where you're going with your game. Because this kind of story could easily be told, whether it's a one-shot or an overarching, campaign. But you could even go and start off the opening parts of your story or sessions with your players trying to, almost like Bloodborne, deal with a slowly raging plague occurring in your city. You see the kind of brilliance of that? Because then you have like the smoke screen to hide the darker elements behind the scenes, as much like investigators in a Lovecraft story, to use that example again, or even in the Hunters of Bloodborne. Like a whole part of like finding Nosferatu and realizing what he is accepting that he exists and that he's out there. And I can see like this perfect kind of campaign arc. But before I go on, I do want to read some other things here. Plot twist: all the players are actually vampires, thinking everyone else in the group are actually vampire hunters trying to kill them. That is funny. I've done games like similar to that before, where I made everyone the traitor. But that's a cool idea too, actually. Having one of the players or one of the characters like Nosferatu secretly in hiding. Like, oh gosh, the amount of things you could do with that. Like, because as I mentioned before, Nosferatu or Count Orlok is known for charming people. He would totally go and convince a group of heroes that they need to go and find Ellen before the monster does. And not knowing that the guy that contracted them to do it in the first place is the goddamn vampire. And they have effectively led the beast to the woman there. Oh my god, that'd be great. Hey, the ant. That feeling when the bard seduces the vampire first. But yes, that's also another good point, Baka, why I wanted to bring up why I think you should make, like, your villain after an NPC than the characters. Because, my gosh, can you imagine the levels of, like, they would kind of ruin the build-up, the themes of just utter dread of darkness that you want to have in your game when the vampire comes in to the room creepily with his, lustful eyes and asks, submit to me. And the bard just goes, okay, shrug, throws down trowel, let's go. I mean, yes, that would be funny, but that would also, like, kind of kill your mood entirely. That's fine, Ant. I'm appreciate you coming in to say hi. But, yeah, I guess it depends if you want to have a funny Nosferatu story. In that case, go for it. Make all your players some form of bard and have the whole shtick be they're trying to see who can, like, woo Orlok to their bedrooms to kill him. Oh my god, that would be kind of funny. But how do you go about building that then? If, joking aside, something like a game like this, well, I think a big way you can easily leave breadcrumbs and stuff like that is take advantage of Orlok's use of beasts and rats to harass your players, their favorite NPCs, and even like mad businessmen that your vampire has like mind controlled. Leave them on almost like wild goose chase that once they kind of put all the pieces together, they realize, oh, there's some more creepy things behind the scenes leading them to your ultimate confrontation, or ultimately race to go and stop the monster from getting the Maiden Fair or Lord Fair. Because Orlok can swing both ways. I mean, why not? Why not? Nosferatu when he meets Mouthferatu. Ha! Love it, the ant. Because, yeah, I think from a player's perspective, it'd be by and large the most exciting if and when they do realize what kind of story they're in. Because, if I said before in this show, there's no such thing as like an entirely unique story, just unique takes on them. But I think running a game around the entire premise that your players are living out or playing out Nosferatu, begging the question, can they ultimately get the vampire before he gets Ellen? Like that, I think, is alone and at its very heart, a fantastic premise. because, goddamn, like, what any DM wouldn't want to find some way to recreate that William Dafoe is like, Oscar scene with him raving mad, burning the whole hallway of rats. Like, I know it happened in the movie, and frankly, it shouldn't happen in any of the versions of the story. But my God, having some form of the tale be your players getting to that classic moment where they are fiery rats everywhere fighting Nosferatu. Like, it'd be cool. It'd be fun. A lot of potential there. A lot of potential. Oh. Release the bracket. He's been around a long time. Probably got bored doing the same thing every day. Yeah. You know, Orlok. Oh, I see. Orlok got bored doing the same thing. Ha. Yeah. So, with any of those kind of like game, ideas in mind, though, or I should say like story arcs in mind, where either the players are trying to hunt down Ellen or trying to search out Nosferatu, some combination thereof, characters that you're probably going to need are things like, William Dafoe's turn as, I forget the character's name in the movie because it's long-winded, but he's Van Helsing in Nosferatu. And having the occult vampire expert, I think is very much needed. Having a few NPCs on the side to kind of like doubt your heroes, like, poppycock, there's no such thing as vampires. This is a basic plague going on. We just need to go and put everyone into quarantine, or to go and send them off to some leper colony, and we'll be fine. Having a few of those in there would be kind of good. Raving lunatics would be, I think, a good bread and butter for your tale. They would be all kinds of good, lack for a better phrase, cannon fodder for fights if you want to kind of like slow things down. Fortunately for you, Nosferatu is also known to take place in many a creepy castle, many a creepy mansion. So there would be oodles of places you could go and take your players into to go spelunking, whether it be for tools or to rescue some maiden fair, or to go and find a vampire himself. And that's a big thing too. The hard thing that I thought long and hard when it came to prepping for this show. Would a good old asylum of vampires? Exactly, Baka. Exactly. But the biggest thing I kind of struggled with kind of talking about or touching upon in the realm of like, should they go and actually fight Orlok? Because in all his versions of him, he is a fantastic manipulator. He is almost like a force of nature himself. And that, I think, deserves the same kind of gravitas. Like, your players should feel like they are in for one hell of a tough fight if they do go against a creature of that nature. Which is why, when getting to my monster sheet I made, which if you want to look at it yourself, you can find it down below in the description, I made it a pretty... It's based on the classic D&D vampire stats, but with my twist. And in fact, I can vouch and say a lot of the choices I have on here are something I've got to play test. Because when I ran Curse of Strahd, my players were pretty damn tenacious. They didn't know it until after we finished the campaign. But at, like, I think it was like maybe level 6 or 7, they came awfully close to beating Strahd before, like, midway through the story. And so I had to go, like, behind the scenes and beef him up so he would be a threat. And that was like the inspiration for my vampire count. Starting with the fact that he has a challenge rating of 15, which, for those who don't really know, means he's probably really set for around a party of level 15s. And that makes him, like, based on the Kobold Fight Simulator, which you can find online, great source for DMs. Makes him about like between a medium and hard fight. If it's just a team of 4 level 15s, what I say? Yeah, 4 level 10s. I'll double check in a second. But yeah, ideally, if they're going to fight this kind of monster, you want them to be past level 10 to really get a chink in this thing's armor. Actually, I'm going to make sure I get the stats right here. Because for those who don't know, D&D has a whole kinds of like point system based on the experience points that can help you determine the level of difficulty for an actual encounter. And in this case, let's see, I think I designed him. I checked this earlier, but I totally forgot because it's live. Doing it live. 1300 XP. Yeah, even for a group of level 10, 4 players at a level 10, it would still be a very deadly encounter. He's probably better off with... Nope, no, wrong one. For players at, like, level 15, if they were going to go, like, solo between the medium and hard, just with, you know, my vampire account against these players. But more to the point, this version, this vampire, the stat sheet, I can guarantee you they won't be up against this monster by themselves for long, because I gave this guy the ability, like you see in the movies, the ability to go and actually summon not only wolves to fight alongside him, but also plague rats that can do all kinds of damage. So this is a fight that could easily see the players going in all kinds of cocky and find out how overwhelmed they are facing this monster, this undead plague carrier, this creature of the night, which is what I wanted for something like this. And unlike most vampires in the D&D realm, he doesn't... I made it like... He doesn't have the same weaknesses as most vampires as we know them. Like, no weakness to garlic, or really to kind of like holy symbols. Count Orlok or the Max Nosferatu for ages always kind of like put those to the side. They don't really do much to stop him. So I made sure to kind of give him as the same kind of level of weaknesses as such. Like, case in point, he can be, staked to the heart. He's sensitive to the sunlight, but that's it. He's not going to be able to be taken out by, like, running water. He can, like, come into houses if he wants to. He does not need permission. Not only that, he has undead fortitude, which effectively means that if they don't take him out in, like, sunlight or by some critical hit, he's getting back up again, which is not good for your players. Let's see what's in the comments here. Myself a break. Strahd was kind of funny for him. I bullied my players, dinner with my players, walked by my players, and Empress did annihilated him. Yeah, like, Strahd is how he's meant to be played in Curse of Strahd, as Baka kind of points out here. Strahd is kind of meant to be like a cat playing with his food. He is assumed he is won, which isn't something that Nosferatu really does. He doesn't really care about winning or losing. His goals are so personal. If anything, the things he does, the players have to kind of overcome, are just meant to be distractions. Hence the importance of, using rats to kind of like spread disease, make your players be running around trying to control that, keeping certain NPCs they love alive, all the while not being prepared for your account to kind of slowly slither in for the final kill. Bracken writes, so we found a master vampire once. We faced him unarmed and discovered a weakness and not yet recorded in any other vampire lore. Chairs. Let me guess, you bang him over the head or something? Because that sounds like a game like you would play in. But getting back to this character sheet, other fun things that I can see you using in this that I try to write in were stuff like Misty Escape, because Nosferatu or Count Orlok is teleporting all over the place all the time in the movies. And I didn't want to make it like a misty form, but it sounded better than making it like a shadow form. Or, yes, he transforms into a cloud of shadows, which didn't sound very on point. Be that as it may that when he's in his full, solid form, he's a tough cookie. I mean, his armor class is 21. He has high strength, high, constitution, because once again, living corpse. He is still vulnerable to radiant, but he is resistant to almost anything like non-magical. I might give that go back and later on update it, have like resistance to silver stuff. Now I don't want to leave the silver out, but yeah, you're gonna need to kind of find in his level. And he is actually made this one an innate spellcaster, kind of like Strahd, where he can use Mage Hand and Prestidigitation to really fuck with the player's worlds. He can detect thoughts, use Fog Cloud and Sleep to really kind of go and control the field and use his intellect to kind of, I don't say intellect, use his way to play with their minds. And if he really is not included enough, he can even go and just scry or cause them to do harm to themselves during the day. All kinds of nasty tools for your toolkit. Fighting wise, he's kind of straightforward with unarmed strikes and bites, but still when he does connect, it is going to hurt. Because, for instance, Vampire makes 2 attacks, only one of which can be a bite attack. So if he does hit them, if he hits them, it's a good 16 in itself. They could be easily dealing up to, let's see, 3 like 24 if you attack theoretically, twice with his unarmed strike. I could easily see you dealing up to at most 48 damage in one turn, which could be devastating to some players. But if you go for the bite, which slowly saps the energy of the players and makes it harder for them to heal back up, that can be devastating as well. And that's even going with the whole his charm ability, which can be devastating when a player finds himself working for the big bad. And all this can be compounded with, once again, the ability to bring in other creatures. Because Nosferatu, his whole battle strategy should be to overwhelm your players to the point that the combat becomes a clear bad idea. Ideally, this is a creature you don't want to fight. It's a creature you want to trick. Which is why I made a point of making his big weaknesses be his intelligence and wisdom. Because as a character, Orlok, I want to say, is naive. He's laser focused. He's almost like horse with blinders focused, which could be deadly for him. And that's something you want to try to get into your players' minds when it comes to the final confrontation. Because that's effectively how Ellen beats him in the movies. She tricks him. She keeps him distracted long enough. He just ignores the sun. Your players could always take that role from her, which would be kind of defeating to the role story. But it's a game. Random stuff can happen. Besides the point. But it doesn't. There's nothing saying that your players can't do the same thing to outsmart the vampire. Because that's what really outsmart the vampire, outsmart this natural force. Because it's kind of one of the unsaid things about the Nosferatu tale. Is that humanity, us living in the real world, is that the only way to get around the forces of nature is to keep to, I guess, your tenacity and to realize that if you can't fight it, doesn't mean you can't beat it on its own terms. Does that make sense? It's kind of like realizing, for instance, you might have a case of anger issues, which I do speak from, personal experience. And that's something you really can get away, have, maybe anger management problems. But it's something you can learn to harness to, I guess, so to speak, win out in the end. Because that's what Ellen does. If Count Orlok's meant to be kind of an embodiment of her loneliness, maybe even a bit of her own lust, she then uses that very lust to take control of the situation and save, effectively, her world. And that's kind of poetic, concerning some of the things these days for people in my age group, where there can be so many things outside of our control. Getting the chance to face a monster that feels like the embodiment of that. And not just outfox it, but find a way to take that wild streak and bring it about as defeat just by going with the flow, or no, taking control of the flow, it can be so damn satisfying. And a good life lesson in a way too. Let's see. Well, what's more comments are here? We beat the shit out of him with fancy dinner table chairs. Yep, see that's what I expected from you, Bracken. Straight up. Dinner chairs, despite his resistance to non-magical damage, which is enough damage to force him to retreat. I could see that. Yeah, there's no saying you can't go in like full-on dog pile. Is the only well-known werewolf freaking Jacob? No, I just realized there's like no iconic werewolves. It's kind of crazy. That is not true. There are a few iconic werewolves, which I may get to in the near future, because next week I do plan to go. I should say this week I plan to go to see the new Universal movie coming out, The Wolfman, and we'll be talking about that next Graveyard Gush, which means if I keep following this trend of doing creature creators based on Graveyard Gush, we could be having a fun Wolfman episode on some of my favorite wolves, like Ginger from Ginger Snaps. You got the wolf from American Werewolf in London, whose main character kind of escapes me at the moment. There are so many fantastic, iconic werewolves that you could bring to. David Kessler. He's a fantastic werewolf. The OG Wolfman. From the classic 40s movies of Larry Talbot, played by the late yet great Lon Chaney Jr. I mean, if Bela Lugosi is to vampires, Lon Chaney is to werewolves. But there's all kinds of great wolves out there. So Jake was by and large probably the most popular one for the time being, but don't undersell old Lon Chaney. Hell, he's even in the song. A few of them. Werewolves of London. I saw Lon Chaney Jr. last night. So, don't discredit him. I guess if you're weeb like me, there's Jin Marika and the captain from Helsing. Yes, exactly. Helsing's a good example, and one of the few cases you actually get to see a vampire using the wolf powers that Drac has, and which is not used not nearly enough for my tastes. Oh yes, please, Bracken, you have to tell me the whole story at some point. At some point, because your boy's got none. Oh yeah, no, I got you covered there. And I think effectively that's really all I have to say on today's kind of talk. If you're looking for more examples, I guess, to take inspiration from, you kind of look into some of the games I talked earlier, like Bloodborne could be a good source for getting this kind of aesthetic. If you're talking about like classic vampire stories, they kind of fit the vibe of Nosferatu. My personal favorite, another William Dafoe vampire tale, would be Daybreakers, where the main premise there is what would happen if vampires ruled the world and humans were effectively livestock. But this could be, a fun kind of like what if sequel in the case of like, what if Nosferatu won and got the girl, took over the world, and now you're leading a resistance against him. I could see there'd be another good inspiration there too. And frankly, there could be no better source of like ideas than the original Dracula story, and I guess to extend Robert Edgar's other works like The Witch. Actually, speaking of which, a good kind of vibe would be to look into the time period that Nosferatu takes place in, because a big part of Edgar's storytelling is the ability to kind of, to inject his worlds with the horrors of what humanity's done, like the dark side of history, which in this case is 1838. Like bringing some of like the horrendous practices in medical care and the horrors of the plague, which might be a bit close to home for some of us, but is something you could go and draw from, is what I'm getting at. Let's see, Baka writes, I'm just saying I can't think of proper names for werewolves, but I can name like 3 proper named vampires: Dracula, Camellia, and the Count here. Okay, that's fair. I think that's because a lot of vampires have been based on noble figures, whereas werewolves are kind of based on a type of monster. Like, I guess like werewolves kind of viewed more like, similar to like fairies or to, I'm trying to think of names, like the Sasquatches, almost like cryptids in terms of what they're considered, compared to vampires, which are more, like I say, associated with aristocrats. Which, if you think about it, is also a great lead into this with Nosferatu. Like, go have a good tale about staking the rich. Yeah. All right, I think that's all I have to say about today. So once again, thank you for watching here to the end. Please let me know if you have any suggestions for future creature creators. I think unless I get ideas, I will probably keep following this format of talking about the latest features we discuss in Graveyard Gush, which will be next week, Monday, this same time. So be there if you want to hear about our thoughts on the Wolfman. This Thursday, we'll be having other delightful drawings. Jade and I will be seeing her finish more of her Sonic sketches she did last time, which I'm excited about because they are cute and she's talented, and I miss her face, even though she's right there. I miss her. I know you guys miss her face too. I also want to mention that this Friday we are going to be at a convention here in Milwaukee. Saturday to be exact. At where exactly? Again? Milwaukee, but the name of it is Milwaukee Anime Fest. Thank you. I'll post the location on Discord and our social media, so keep an eye out for there. But it's on our Tumblr. Cool. So if you want to come see hi to us, please do. It's going to be a one-day thing. I heard the voice actors for Goku and I only know her as Genkai from Yu Yu Hakusho, but as you should too. What's that? Frieza. She's right there. The Frieza there too. So come see hi to them in Milwaukee and see hi to us. And if you don't do all of that, at least consider liking the stream and liking and subscribing. Subscribe to all the things. Go find us on our various social media and come say hi, because we like talking to you. I like talking to you, Baka and Brackens. I appreciate you being here. Let's see. Doing your iterations of Universal Monsters could be a fun for this series. Vampire here, possibly Wolfman in the future, maybe a movie Mummy later, or yeah. I would love to talk about all of those, and I probably will, because me and my friends on the Gush love all of those classic monsters. In fact, we were talking last stream about if you would see the monsters as like your own like zodiac kind of creatures, saying like, hey, which one are you? Myself, Wolfman, which kind of makes sense with how hairy I am. But yeah, no, it should be a fun time. As will be delightful drawings this Thursday. But if you don't do any of that, hey, thank you for listening for this long. Thank you for hanging out. Do want to do a quick shout out to my patrons: Zasra, Moody Mori, Wally, Lodom, and Phantom Ghoul. I see Baka saying suggesting Shin Godzilla or -1 Godzilla could be crazy high CR options for you. Yes, I would love to do a Godzilla at some point. There's so many good options, and the fact I'm streaming now does make it get out these a whole lot quicker. So yeah, you could be seen compared to last year with only, I guess, technically one creature creator. We potentially could be seeing us with close to 26 new creator videos. So look forward to that. But if you don't do anything as I suggested, that's all right. I love you either way. You have a great night. Stay warm out there, or stay cool if you're on the West Coast. And yeah, love ya.